During the Battle of Hanau, the combat result called for the loss of 12 factors on the Protestant force. I mistakenly only inflicted 9 by reducing 2 full-strength units and eliminating a reduced unit. So now we will remove another reduced unit to account for all 12 loss factors. And now the Protestant force in Hanau has 17 combat factors. This is the situation at the beginning of the last turn. The Protestants have 17 combat factors, all here in Hanau with Gustavus. The Pillage 2 marker means that no recruiting will take place in this city. The Catholics have 2 armies, Wallenstein's Imperial Army in Nuremberg with 13 combat factors, and Tilly's Bavarians stationed further south in Ingolstadt with 9. Both Catholic armies, however, cannot stack and therefore cannot attack together. This presents an opportunity for Gustavus to defeat them in detail. However, Gustavus has an additional problem. This is the last turn and the victory point score is currently at 44. To win the game, the Protestants must lower the score to 30 victory points, and to obtain at least a draw, the score must be reduced to 37. And now we move to game turn 8, the last turn of this intervention scenario. So we go to the Wallenstein phase, and Wallenstein is in play. In order for the Imperial and Bavarian armies to join, Wallenstein would have to be assassinated, and it would require the play of an event card that allows this type of action. However, the cards have not been dealt yet for this round, so there's no guarantee that the Catholics will receive such cards, so Wallenstein will remain in play. Pillage recovery phase. Each side can only remove 1 level of pillage. So the pillage level in Hanau is reduced. And the Catholics reduce the pillage level at Ingolstadt. Card draw phase, the Protestants will draw 7 cards and the Catholics 6. And we see here that this hand has 4 one-point cards, including 2 combat cards, and no 3-point cards at all. However, this card provides a new leader and 3 Protestant militia, so it can serve the purpose of recruiting additional troops to the Protestant cause. And here is the Catholic hand, and here we have that card we were talking about, the Elector Maximilian card, which lifts the restriction on Bavarian and Imperial units stacking, but it costs 2 victory points. However, it requires Wallenstein to have been removed by leader loss or assassination, so that is highly unlikely unless he's killed in a battle early in the turn. However, there's a 3-point card that can be used for recruiting. We have this combat card, which is very limited in its use because it requires the Catholic army to have a Spanish veteran unit, and the only veteran units so far left in the game are those of Córdoba, which are way to the west in Brussels. First, Protestant Activation. And the Protestants play this card for the event, so George of Brunswick-Lüneburg and 3 Protestant militia will be deployed in that area. And although not stated in the card, in the rules it states that this brings the area Brunswick-Lüneburg now under Protestant control. An interesting note is that George by himself can only move 2 units, so Gustavus is going to have to send somebody up north to Brunswick-Lüneburg to pick up these militia. And the area is now under Protestant control, and this reduces the victory point now 2 points to 42. First, Catholic Activation. The Catholics will play this card to make 3 recruitment attempts, 2 with Wallenstein and 1 with Tilly. So Wallenstein will roll twice, once for mercenaries and once for militia, and the die roll initially is modified by +2 for Wallenstein's special recruiting abilities, but -1 because of the pillage level. And Wallenstein recruits 2 steps of mercenaries that will be taken as 2 reduced units, and 2 steps of militia that will be taken as a full-strength militia unit. And his army is fully stacked at 8 units and 18 combat factors. Now Tilly rolls with no modification because even though he's a dynamic leader, there is a 1 pillage marker, and he will roll for militia. Tilly's only able to recruit 1 step of militia. Second Protestant Activation. And the Protestants play this card to activate Gustavus Adolphus. So Gustavus is activated and he will split his force. He will leave his 3 militia units with King and George of Hesse-Kassel in Hanau, and will take his 4 Swedish veterans with Horn and Bernard to Wetzlar. He will spend an additional movement point to convert that city to Protestant control, and from there he will move to Kassel and now spend a 4th movement point to convert that city to Protestant control. By doing that, the Protestants now have 3 cities in Hesse-Kassel under their control, so that means now that control of the area reverts to the Protestants. And now 2 victory points are subtracted from the Catholic score. So now the score goes down to 40. And now he moves into Brunswick, where he picks up George's militia troops and spends his 6th movement point to move into Halberstadt. His activation causes 2 points of pillage to be placed in Brunswick. Second Catholic Activation. Catholics have seen how Hesse-Kassel has been recovered by the Protestants and Brunswick-Lüneburg has joined their cause, adding 4 victory points or causing a loss of 4 victory points from the Catholic score. And the Catholics deduced that their next target area may be Saxony, so they will move Tilly's army into Saxony. The Catholics play this card for the activation point to activate Tilly. Tilly is here in Ingolstadt. He moves to Nuremberg and from there to Pilsen, and finally ending his move in the fortress of Leipzig. His move leaves 2 levels of pillage in Pilsen. Protestant Third Activation. So the Protestants will play this card for its activation value, and Gustavus will be activated. So Gustavus is here in Halberstadt and he is activated. Gustavus will first split his force. He will leave Bernard and George of Brunswick-Lüneburg in Halberstadt with 2 full-strength militia units, keeping an eye on the Bavarians in Leipzig. And he will move to Kassel and from there to Hanau, picking up the leaders and the 3 militia units, and moving into Würzburg, which is enemy controlled. He will not lay siege to that city, but he will continue into Schweinfurt, and from there he will enter Nuremberg and attack Wallenstein. And now to the battle. Gustavus has 19 combat factors, Wallenstein 18. Since Gustavus left 2 full-strength militia units at Halberstadt, keeping an eye on the Bavarians, he deprived himself of having that extra combat factor that would give him an advantage in the combat table. He would have rolled 1 column to the right of the column that the Catholics would roll. They will now, both forces, roll on the same column. However, Gustavus has a battle rating of 3, Wallenstein of 2. Now the Protestants decide how many combat cards they want to use. The Protestants will play this card, Command Rivalry, since the opposing army has 2 leaders, so that is -1 to the Catholic combat die roll. And they will also play this card, Cavalry Charge, which will give the Protestants +1. The Catholics have 1 combat card, but they decide to save it for future use. Protestants roll a 1, +3 for Gustavus's battle rating, and +1 for the combat card. It is 5. So rolling under this column, a 5 produces 9 loss factors on the Catholic force. Now the Catholics roll, and they have a +2 for Wallenstein's battle rating, but a -1 because of the Command Rivalry card. So it is a net +1. And the Catholics roll a 7, +1 is 8, and 8 is 10 loss factors inflicted on the Protestant side. Now we proceed to absorb the losses in combat. So we have here that the Protestants eliminated a reduced militia unit, flipped these full-strength militia units and eliminated one to absorb all 10 combat loss factors. And meanwhile, the Catholics flipped 3 full-strength militia units and 1 full-strength mercenary unit to absorb its 9 loss factors. Now we roll for leader loss, starting with Gustavus. He rolls a 1 and he's fine. Horn barely survives with a 7. King. He rolls a 9 and he is killed, and there's no replacement for him. William of Hesse-Kassel, and he survives. Now we roll for the Catholics, starting with Gallas. He rolls a 6, he survives, and now Wallenstein. He also rolls a 6 and survives a battle. So the Protestants lose this battle and have to retreat from the field, and the Catholics hold on to Nuremberg. And Gustavus retreats back to Schweinfurt, and his march left a point of pillage in Schweinfurt and another one in Würzburg that increases the level there to 2. After the last battle, which the Catholics barely won, each of the main opposing armies has 14 combat factors. The Bavarians in Leipzig have 10, and the small militia force of the Protestants in Halberstadt has 4. The score remains 40 victory points. The Protestants have to reduce it by 3 for the game to be a draw. Third Catholic, activation. The Catholics will play this card for the activation value to activate Mercy, who is with Tilly in Leipzig. So Mercy and 1 reduced mercenary unit is split from Tilly's force, moves into Dresden, and from there they move to Gorlitz and into Protestant-controlled Brandenburg by way of Cottbus, spending an additional movement point to convert it to Catholic control. And from there they move into Berlin, where the force spends its 6th movement point to convert that city also to Catholic control. So Mercy invaded Brandenburg for the purpose of stealing 2 points from the Protestants and create a diversion for Gustavus's main army, which is stationed here in Schweinfurt. Fourth Protestant activation. There are 3 activations left for each side, and the Protestants have an additional problem. They only have 2 cards left because they have used 3 cards this turn as combat cards. We saw here that Mercy detached from Tilly's force and invaded Brandenburg and is 1 city away from capturing the area and gaining 2 victory points for the Catholic side, which would make even more difficult for the Protestants to discount enough points to victory points to lower the score to 37. Nearby that force is Bernard's militia force, which is only 4 combat factors strong. Gustavus could reach and attack and probably overrun that force, but by doing so, he would not have enough cards or impulses or activations to invade here these the Lower Palatinate in Spanish Netherlands and capture these 3 independent fortresses by siege. If he would capture these fortresses, Mainz, Trier, and Koln, that would give him 6 victory points. So Bernard will have to do the job of getting rid of Mercy's force. Protestants play this card to activate Bernard. Bernard starts here in Halberstadt, and from there he moves to Magdeburg and spends his 3rd movement point to enter Cottbus, where he spends an additional movement point to convert it to Protestant control. And then moves into Berlin to attack Mercy. Because Bernard's force has only 2 units, he does not cause any additional pillage. Now on to the battle. The Protestants attack with 4 combat factors, while the Catholics defend with 2. Only the Catholics have 1 combat card left, but they will not use it in this combat. So the Protestants roll a die. It is a 7 modified because of Bernard's battle rating 2 and 8, and the Catholic force suffers 4 loss factors. Now the Catholics fire back with 2 combat factors and a +2 because of Mercy's battle rating. Die roll is a 2 modified to a 4, and that causes 0 combat loss on the Protestant side. So the Catholic force is eliminated, and that will cause the elimination of Mercy. And now we roll for leader loss, starting with George of Brunswick-Lüneburg. George is killed, and he is replaced by an unnamed leader. Now we roll for Bernard, and he barely survives. So that's the end of this battle. Because they won the battle for Berlin, the city is now under Protestant control. 4th Catholic activation. And the Catholics play this card for the activation value to activate Tilly. Tilly, with 8 combat factors, activates his army and moves to Dresden, and from there to Gorlitz, Cottbus, where an additional movement factor is spent to convert the city to Catholic control, and on to Berlin to attack Bernard. Tilly's march leaves a point of pillage in Gorlitz. The Catholics have a 2-to-1 advantage in 8 combat factors against the Protestants' 4. The Catholics roll first. No combat card will be used, even though they have one in their hand, and it will be a +2 because of Tilly's battle rating. 6 is rolled, modified to an 8, and that causes 8 loss factors on the Protestants. Protestants fire back with 4 combat factors and a +1 for Bernard's battle rating. But they roll a 1 modified to a 2, which causes 2 loss factors. The 8 loss factors suffered by the Protestants eliminate the entire force, and that includes both leaders. On the Catholic side, 1 reduced militia unit is eliminated, and we roll for leader loss for William and Tilly. William is killed, and since he was a replacement, his counter is removed, and now we roll for Tilly. Tilly survives the battle, and Berlin now reverts to Catholic control. Control of Brandenburg, however, requires control of 3 cities. The Catholics only have control of 2, so it is still in Protestant hands. This is the situation before the 5th Protestant activation. The Protestants only have 1 card left. They have 14 combat factors in Gustavus' army here in Schweinfurt, facing an equal number of combat factors with Wallenstein's Catholic army. Meanwhile, Tilly is further north here in Berlin with 7 combat factors. Wallenstein is definitely blocking Gustavus' path down to Bavaria. So the only other option that Gustavus has, in light of the fact that Brandenburg is going to fall to the Catholics, is to invade west here into the Lower Palatinate and attempt to seize the following independent fortresses, each worth 2 victory points: Mainz, Koln, and Trier. 5th Protestant activation. The Protestants play this, their last card, now in the 5th round. They will not have a card for the 6th activation. And they will play this card to activate Gustavus, and the event shown here, which always takes effect, will not have any in the game, since neither Moravia or Silesia has any pillage marker or army in it. Gustavus starts his activation here in Schweinfurt. He moves into Würzburg, bypassing the enemy fortress there and continuing into Hanau and into Wetzlar, and spending his 4th movement point to reach Koln. At Koln, he will split his force, leaving William of Hesse Castle there with 1 Swedish veteran and 1 militia unit, and Gustavus will continue into Mainz, where he spends his 5th movement point, and then he splits his force once again, leaving Horn there with 1 Swedish veteran and 1 Protestant militia unit, and Gustavus continues into Trier, ending his move there with 2 Swedish veterans. His march increases the pillage level in Hanau to 2 and places 1 point of pillage in Trier. And siege markers are placed in each of the 3 electorate cities. If the Protestants are successful in capturing all 3 electorate fortress cities, the score will go down to 34 victory points, which would be a draw. 5th Catholic activation. There are 2 activations left for the Catholics. The Catholics have 3 forces on the board: Cordoba's Spanish army, 12 combat factors, Wallenstein's Imperial army with 14, and Tilly's Bavarians here in Brandenburg with 7. They cannot activate all 3, only 2. If they activate Cordoba's Spanish army, he could strike at any one of the Protestant forces who are besieging these fortresses. The same for Wallenstein. He can strike here at Mainz and also can strike here at Koln. On the other hand, Tilly can use 1 activation to move into Havelberg, convert that space into Catholic control, and gain control of Brandenburg. Also, Tilly could probably move into Mecklenburg and also gain control of that area. And that would yield 4 victory points to the Catholic cause. That would practically render the capture of these cities as moot. The Catholics play this card to activate Tilly. Tilly's army is activated. He moves into Havelberg, and there he spends a 2nd movement point to convert the city to Catholic control. By doing that, now the Catholics have control of 3 cities, and the area of Brandenburg is now theirs. Tilly continues his movement into Wittstock and spends a 4th movement point there to convert that city to Catholic control. And he now moves into Rostock, and once there spends a 6th movement factor to convert that city to Catholic control. He ends his move in Rostock, has converted 2 cities in Mecklenburg to Catholic control, so now the area is Catholic. And by converting Mecklenburg and Brandenburg to Catholic control, Tilly has gained 4 victory points to his cause, increasing the Catholic score now to 44 victory points. He ends his move, and it causes an additional level of pillage in Wittstock. Now it's the 6th and last Protestant activation of the game. The Protestants have no cards left. They could only take a free action, which would allow them to move a leader or a combat unit, but only armies can convert spaces, that is cities, to their side's control, and armies are the combination of leaders and combat units. So the Protestants cannot convert any more spaces during this turn to their control. So that would leave them with the chance of obtaining or seizing these cities by siege, and in the most optimist result for them, if they capture all 3 cities, this would give the Catholics 6 victory points. And if we deduct that from the current victory point score, which is 44, that would result in 38, which is the minimum number of victory points needed by the Catholics to win. So, in other words, the Protestants can't do anything to affect or avoid a Catholic victory. So that's the end of the game, and the Catholics win. In their 6th round, the Catholics could have played this card for the event and gained an additional victory point. This game saw a Catholic victory which was not seriously threatened throughout the game. The early appearance of Cardinal Infantes' army greatly boosted Catholic strength and prevented the Swedish from recruiting significant Protestant mercenaries and militias. I would say that this scenario is harder for the Protestant player since he must maintain the initiative and offensive while marshalling numerically inferior forces. I have heard some criticism about the game that many of the events in the cards seem unimportant, leading players to mostly play cards for activation and recruitment purposes only. I think this proves true in a short scenario such as this one, where one side is hard-pressed into conquering territories on a short timetable. However, in a long campaign game, this may not be the case, since the game system creates a huge pillage wasteland that seriously hampers continuing campaigning over the same area of the map. This game, because of its nature as a card-driven game, is not easy to play solitaire. However, I still find it a very enjoyable game since it provides the player with many instances where he must make hard choices. We have to bear in mind that this game was published in 2001 during the first wave of card-driven games. This game system genre has developed throughout the years, and I believe that this game deserves a new edition with some rule changes. For instance, Gustavus, King of Sweden, under the present rules, cannot pick up any of his subordinate Swedish dynamic leaders and their armies during movement. Also, the game could benefit from some sort of response mechanism that would allow non-phasing forces to either intercept or withdraw in light of an impending enemy attack. All in all, this is a game that should provide a very interesting and challenging experience for two players, even in its current form. Thanks for watching.